Hello, this is your host, Austin Hopkins, and welcome to the Introvert Leader Podcast. Welcome to episode 18. Super excited for this one because I'm actually recording it in my new home state of Arizona. Excited to be here. Been here about a week. It's been pretty cool so far. Have really enjoyed kind of getting to explore the awesome biking trails, and we've been going out and doing some shopping. I don't know about you, but whenever I move somewhere new, I feel like I live at the grocery store and Target. I swear we have been to that Target down the street probably 10 times in the course of a week. We're already regulars, so when we go in there, they already know my name. But seriously, it's crazy how much stuff you need when you move to a new place. So been kind of enjoying that, and honestly just been enjoying the sun and kind of getting to explore the new areas, figure out where my go-to coffee shop's going to be. But it's been a blast so far, really enjoying it. So yeah, more to come on kind of our experience here in AZ. But so far, me and the wifey and the dogs are absolutely in love with it. All right, so here's what I've been into recently. Music. I'm an Ellie Goulding fan and have been for a while, probably ever since the early 2000s when she was doing a lot of collaborations with Calvin Harris. But anyway, she released a new album. I believe it was March or April of this year. I'm a little late to the game hearing it. And it's called Higher Than Heaven. And I hadn't really listened to it, but I was flipping through Amazon Prime the other day and noticed that she did a concert at Kew Gardens, Kew Gardens in the UK. And it was about this album. And so essentially she was playing through this whole album. And I really enjoyed it. So I gave that a watch, really enjoyed it. Awesome music. She put on a great show. And I'm sure you've heard of her, but she kind of didn't put out a music for a few years, but she's back, folks. And I really enjoyed that. So that's a fun one that I've been watching. And then as far as just kind of other updates for me, so I'm really excited. We are probably a few weeks away from me officially launching that new STS coaching with my good friend Kyle Leonard. I've been working on the website and just fixing it, making sure it's looking perfect and everything's functional. I've done quite a few different run-throughs already with clients and got a lot of feedback. So really excited to launch that. And essentially what that's going to be is a career and leadership coaching platform. So if you have questions about how to navigate your career, on how to take on assignments at work, on how to ask for a raise, or how to lead more effectively, or make a bigger impact in your current role so you can be seen and potentially get a promotion, this is exactly the kind of stuff we're going to be helping people with. So I'm really excited to launch that here in the next few weeks. As well, I have been kind of going back and forth on the idea of launching a newsletter that would go along with the podcast. And really the thought behind that would be give folks a little bit more behind the scenes on the topics, give them more resources, and kind of allow myself to write out my thoughts in written form. And because, I know a lot of people don't always listen to podcasts, so I figured that would be a kind of a cool companion to the podcast. So been working on that as well, and more to come. But I'm kind of excited about both of those things. Stay tuned for some news about STS coaching. And I'm probably even going to have Kyle, my business partner, on the podcast where we talk about kind of how to start a business and maybe talk a little bit about more what we're going to be doing. So really excited about that. And to wrap up, a quote for the day that's tying into what we're talking about today, which is leading a project like a boss. The quote is, "It's a bad plan that admits of no modification." And I like that one because it kind of speaks to the fact that, plans are great, right? And you can plan all day and make sure that everything's perfect. But at the end of the day, life is not perfect. Things happen. And so you got to be able to kind of roll with the punches, got to be able to adjust mid-project. And so really kind of thought that one spoke to what we're going to be breaking down today. So why discuss leading projects, right? I think leading a project at work can be one of the most rewarding experiences, but can also cause massive stress, right? I've led countless projects during my career. And really what I want to do is kind of just share with you my go-to strategies, the things that have worked over and over again to produce successful projects. And maybe you're thinking about leading your first project, or maybe you've led many projects before and you want to just get a little bit better. This episode's for you. So the projects that I've worked on in the past have ranged anything from onboarding and training projects to new market expansion, moving into new territories, product management projects, operational excellence projects, process improvements, sales projects, you name it. I've done them all. But really what I've done is kind of just condensed all of those learnings, all of the things that I know have worked, the things that haven't worked, the things I've observed from others. A lot of times I've learned some of my greatest lessons when leading projects just by watching others. So I want to transition and talk about the different parts of a project. So we're going to talk about planning, what you do during the project. What is your mindset, the communication, things like that. But to start, it all starts with planning, right? And it all starts with a goal. And so for me, I always like to start with the end in mind. Right? Stephen Covey wrote this book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and he talks about the importance of starting with the end in mind. This allows you to have a consistent and clear North Star, right? Something that you can all kind of march to, something you can all focus on, and something that will allow you to weather the storms, right? Weather the inconsistencies of life, of projects, right? So before you start any project, it's so imperative that you determine the goal. What will success look like in your eyes? What will success look like in the key stakeholders' eyes, right? Because what you might define as success might be a little different than what the key stakeholders of the project might define as success. So figure that out up front. Take the time, and it's going to cause you to waste less time later on, and you're going to have something to unify the project team. So under planning, I think the other thing that's really important is you got to figure out what are the resources and the tools that you're going to need, right? For most projects, you're going to need certain resources and tools in order to effectively lead the project. So sit down with the project team, the key stakeholders, the business partners, whoever's going to be involved with the project or have some sort of skin in the game, and determine what are the resources that you're going to need, right? And resources could be things like the hours needed to complete the project, communication tools, software tools, vendors you're going to need. Could be project management tools like Trello, Jira, whatever it's going to be, right? But make sure you really think through the different resources and tools you're going to need up front. The reason for that is you don't want to get halfway through the project and realize, oh my gosh, I don't have the resources I need, then have to look stupid and go ask for them when you could have just planned a little bit better up front. So take that time, figure out the resources and tools you're going to need. Think outside the box, make a list, don't rush this, ask for feedback from people, make sure you got it all squared away. The next thing I think that is really, really helpful when kind of starting a project or really any kind of situation related to your career is performing a SWOT exercise. So a lot of you might know what a SWOT exercise is, but some of you might not know what that means. So really a SWOT exercise is a method or strategy for evaluating something. You can use this to evaluate almost anything. Project, companies, decisions, and really it's a great tool to help you make sure that you determine what the project's strengths are, what the weaknesses are, what are the opportunities, and what are the threats, right? So the strengths and weaknesses, those are going to be internal things that are related to this project. So what are the potential strengths of this project? What are the potential weaknesses of this project? And then the opportunities and threats, those are going to be external. So opportunities, what are the things outside of the project that we can do to make it better? Threats, what are the things that we can't control? They're outside of us, outside of our control, but that can still threaten the project. So think through those things. Jot them down, work with the project team, make sure that you have all that, because that time you invest to do a SWOT exercise up front is going to help you optimize the project performance while protecting it from potential problems, right? If you can think through all of the different things that could get in your way, all of the different threats and potential obstacles, that means when they come up, you're not going to be overwhelmed. You're ready for them, right? You're prepared. You already figured it out. You already got your plan done. So really, really cool tool. If you haven't tried a SWOT exercise, I think you are going to enjoy it. So, right, as you're planning, it's going to be so important that you create a clear vision for the project, right? And I have found, and I believe that the best way to get buy-in from a team of folks is to create the vision together. So you're most likely going to be working with folks on your project. And what I would recommend doing is pulling all those folks together to talk about what the vision of the project's going to be. right? So you obviously know what the goal is. You're going to have an end in mind of what you guys want to accomplish, but how you're going to do that and what it's going to feel like and who's going to do what and what's at stake. Those are the things that you want to go around a room and really figure out. So go around the room with everybody there and ask each person for their thoughts on the vision. Take notes and then jointly create what the vision for that project will be. This alignment early on is going to pay off huge dividends later on. And when things get tough during the project, the team will have something to focus on and unite towards, right? If you have something that you guys all agree on, that means if people get off track or things get in the way or things get challenging, you still have something to work towards. So I believe creating that vision up front, not just you as the project leader, but pulling everybody in together and figuring out what is the vision of the project, so important. If you do that up front, I promise you're going to have way less issues later on. It is one of the best things you can do. Just like if you're a leader and you're starting at a new team or a new company, it's important to set the vision. Same exact thing with a project. So highly recommend doing that. So we talked a lot about planning and how important it is, but I think planning is important, but action is key. So be careful not to spend too much time in planning. I've seen many folks make this mistake. They're spending hours, weeks, and sometimes even months trying to plan a project perfectly. They think all that planning will ensure a perfect result. And sometimes this turns into paralysis. So they've spent so much time planning that they just stay in that mode. They don't actually ever take any action, right? They just keep thinking through all the things that could go wrong and all of the different options. And again, planning is important, but within reason. So plan carefully, but embrace the fact that even the best plans fail. Action plus a plan is the key. Have confidence in your ability and the project team's ability to improvise and problem solve as necessary. Don't allow that planning to turn into paralysis. Okay, so we've planned. We've done a SWOT exercise. We've created the vision. Now it's time to actually kick off the project. So usually you're going to have a meeting to do that. And the key here, the theme of the project kickoff is set the tone. So set up a meeting with all the folks that are going to be working on the project, go around and cover the goal of the project, right? The end. What's the end in mind? Then jointly create the vision, the resources needed, the role and responsibilities for each person, and give an opportunity to folks to ask questions and check for clarity throughout, right? So an example could be like, hey, Tony, does our end goal make sense to you? Or Jessica, do you actually think you can deliver that within the time we're asking for? So make sure that you're checking with people throughout. You're not just talking at them. It's an interactive meeting. As you kick off the project, also, it's super important that you set clear expectations. I've seen projects before where people talk a big game about what the project is going to be, and then they end the meeting and nobody actually knows what they're supposed to work on. So don't be one of those people. As you kick off the project, make sure you get super clear with all the parties that are involved on what your expectations will be. And of course, ask them, what are their expectations of you? The less you leave open to interpretation, chance, you name it, the more success you'll see. Assumptions are your enemy in this stage. So examples of different kind of expectations that could be set could be delivery dates, could be communication, deliverables, performance goals, whatever it is. Get really specific on what you want people to accomplish within the time period you want them to accomplish it. And the last thing you want to do during that meeting is you want to create the energy and pump up the team. Show them what the impact of the project will be. Connect their work on the project to the big picture. Show them how their contributions will directly lead to success. And I've, managed many projects in my career, and I've learned that people will do amazing things if they feel they're contributing to something bigger. So don't make it just about the project. How does that project tie into the goals of the department or the business unit or of the whole company, right? And if you can tie those things together, people are going to be able to be more invested. They're going to work harder and they're going to give you their best because they feel like they're part of something bigger, right? We don't want to just do work that's meaningless. That's just not enjoyable as humans, but we want to do things that have meaning, that tie into something bigger and allow us to stretch ourselves. So as you're kicking off the project, think about those things. Set your clear expectations, pump up the team, create the energy, and make sure that you've got buy-in from everybody. Okay, so we talked about how you kick off a project. What I want to do now is transition and talk about what's the mindset that you need to have when you're leading a project. And by the way, how you think determines how you're going to execute. So for me, the first thing that I've always tried to do and what I've learned really, really works is create what I like to call a same team mindset. So you're going to be working on projects in your career where you're managing people during the project who don't actually work for you, right? They don't actually report to you. You don't have one-on-ones with them necessarily. They work for somebody else completely, but you're still going to have influence over them during the project. So it's important that you keep that in mind and you realize that even though they don't work for you, you need to create an environment where it feels as if you guys are all on the actual same team, that you actually work for the same team. You have the same boss. So what I did to do that is I tried to check in on the team personally. I gave them my support. I spent time with them and I communicated with the whole team frequently. I didn't communicate in silos, and I made sure that anytime I was communicating, it was to the group if there was something they all needed to hear. If there was positive messages, I made sure that was all done in a group setting as well. But I wanted to make sure that I was there for support. I didn't just leave them to do their own thing. And I wanted to spend time with them because that really helped. And it's interesting, the more I connected, we felt like we were teammates and the better our performance would end up being. I remember folks saying things like, even though I don't work for you, it feels like we're on the same team. And whenever I heard stuff like this, I kind of knew I was on the right track. And so I would lean into that more and more and more. I think another really, really important thing that you have to keep in mind as you're potentially leading a project is don't micromanage. It can be so easy to fall into that trap of micromanagement, right? A lot of times it's feeling like we don't have control or worrying about something or someone is not meeting our expectations. But as a leader of a project, your job isn't necessarily to execute. Your job is to orchestrate. So your role is to give the team the freedom and autonomy to do the job they were hired for. Set clear expectations, be close by for support, but don't micromanage. Allow people to make small little mistakes themselves. Allow them to, skin their knees, as they say, and try new things. If you do it for them, if you micromanage them, you're going to get suboptimal results. And as well, you're going to have way more on your shoulders than you can manage. So trust your team. Hire the right people for the team, work with the right people, set expectations that are clear, and just let them do their thing. You're going to find that they're going to have much, much better engagement and they're going to bring their best because they realize you trust them to do the job they were hired for. And the last one in this vein for me is recognition. Let recognition be your project superpower. The more you recognize someone for a behavior or result, the more you see of it. Right, so I'll say that again. The more you recognize someone for something, the more you see that. So if I recognize you for communicating really well, you're going to work to continue to communicate effectively. Or if I recognize you for your follow through, you're going to make sure that you're consistently following through because it feels good to get recognized, right? So while you're leading a project, try to find something every week to recognize. Did someone hit a deadline? Great. Send them an email. Did someone generate a cool idea? Treat them to a coffee. Or did someone catch an error? Maybe you send a mass email giving them some love, right? Things like this create a healthy project culture where people bring their best. We like to feel recognized. So if you're not recognizing during a project, if you're just saving that for other things, you are missing out, my friend. Recognition is your superpower. The more you recognize, the more you realize the power of this amazing tool, the more success you and your team are going to find. And finally, remember that a project is a direct reflection of you. Any work you do, projects you lead, or work that you're involved with are a reflection of who you are. Is the project organized? Do people enjoy working with you? Is the project on track or on time? These things are going to be asked, and they are a reflection of you. So make sure that the answers reflect who you are. Don't take even small projects for granted. They can lead to bigger projects, bigger responsibilities, and new opportunities or jobs. And I like that quote, how you do some things is how you do anything. Okay, moving on. I want to talk about what it looks like during the project. And the key here is to drive momentum. That is your job as the leader, to drive momentum, to make sure people are getting the things done that they said they were going to do. So 2 things I think are really, really important for you to think about as you're leading projects as it relates to driving momentum. Number 1 is communication routines. So things like meetings, status updates, key stakeholder updates. It's very important that you establish consistent project check-ins, right? Don't leave success up to chance. So depending on the project, this could be weekly communication, it could be bi-weekly, but make them frequent enough to catch problems as they arise, but not too frequent that they become unnecessary. So examples of these kind of communication routines could be a Zoom meeting, could be a phone call, could be an email. But again, you want to make sure that you're meeting you want to make sure that you're meeting frequently enough that you're catching things and you're driving performance and the momentum, but you also don't want to be on meetings where there's nothing to talk about because you're meeting too frequent. So there's going to be a way to figure that out, and just kind of listen to the people on the team or your gut telling you, hey, is this frequent enough or not too frequent? You can't just meet up front and assume that everything is going to be figured out towards the end. You got to keep that communication up all the way through the end of the project. And again, that communication is not just with your team, it's with key stakeholders, it's with anyone who's involved or has skin in the game with the project. The next thing that's really important to do during the project is make sure that you have progress deadlines. I found that having clear progress deadlines ensures that a project has consistent progress. So the last thing you want to do is save up all the hard work for the end and play catch up. This is coming from a guy who's a procrastinator, but I've learned that some people don't work that way. So I can't say that it's fair for me to procrastinate on the project and just hope everyone will play catch up at the end. That's just not respectful. So in order to be respectful and limit stress, make sure that you see consistent progress through the life of the project. So set those deadlines, make sure that people are clear on them, hold them accountable. If they miss a deadline, make sure you pull them up and ask, hey, what's going on? What can I do to help? Is there any reason we didn't make this deadline? Do we need to adjust future deadlines? But make sure that you have those deadlines. Don't just hope the work gets done. Have a plan to make sure it gets done. So we talked about what your mindset should be with a project, what to do before you start a project, what you do as you're in the project. What I want to talk about now and transition to is what it looks like after the project. And the key to this one is learning from the experience. So 3 things that I always do when I finish a project. Number 1 is I ask for feedback. So ask the project stakeholders, your team, your peers for feedback on the project. The more candid they get, the better. So examples of questions you could ask could be things like this. How do you think the project went? Was there anything I could have done better to lead the project? How was my support throughout? How was my communication? What's something you think we could do better next time? These are some questions that you can ask that are going to give you really insightful information to say, hey, I was on the right track. I did this wrong. Our team missed this, etc. It's going to give you information that you wouldn't know had you not asked. So ask for feedback. If you're not using feedback in your career right now, I'm telling you, the moment you start asking for feedback, you are going to grow far faster and far more than you ever imagined. Ask for feedback, especially after you finish a project. The next one for me would be tracking my key learnings, right? So what I want to do is some personal reflection. I'm going to ask myself some questions. What went well? What didn't go as planned? What could I have done better to ensure success? And track all of these learnings, right? After you finish a project or anything work related, write down your key findings. I had this little note on my computer that I could add updates on my phone or my work computer, anywhere, my iPad. And basically this little note would be all my key learnings. And I would reference that. So as new things came up in my career later on, I had those key learnings to fall back on. I didn't have to try to remember because I have a horrible memory and it wouldn't work. But I did have this little note and I used it frequently. So we talked about all things project and how to lead one. Right, so maybe you are going to be leading your first project. Maybe you led many projects. I'm hoping you took a couple of nuggets away, a couple of things that I've learned and a couple of obstacles that I've ran into in the past that hopefully you can avoid. But what I want to do is kind of pull it all together and tell you a quick story. So I was working at a financial institution who was stuck in the past. This company had many outdated processes, including how clients would schedule appointments to meet with employees of the company. So if you were interested in chatting with someone from the bank, you would either drive down to a location and put your name on a clipboard and then wait for someone to help you. And this could take anywhere from 20 minutes to 2 hours. Or maybe you didn't want to do that and you would call someone over the phone. And your best bet was either to call the local office and wait on hold or just keep calling back until someone was available. Obviously, either one of these options absolutely sucked. And the company knew it needed to implement something to streamline appointments. So an executive I worked with at the time asked if I would co-lead the project that would implement a new appointment tool. Up until this point, I'd never led a project of this scope. This was a big project. There was real money being spent, and the tool would be used by over 200 employees, and it would be available to our 300,000 plus clients. So she asked me, Austin, think about leading this project and get back to me. I barely let her finish her sentence before I enthusiastically said, yes, I knew a project like this could put me on the map, and I was ready to be challenged. And I think these are the moments in my career that I remember where you feel like something is given to you, it's offered to you, and you're scared, but you still say yes. So I said yes, and I was ready to jump in. So I was going to be co-leading this project with an experienced IT executive named Cash. If I had to sum up Cash in one word, it would be badass. I mean, this guy had worked at large corporations, he was leading huge projects, and I knew I could learn a lot from this guy if I just kept my eyes open and tried to learn and observe. And from the start, I could tell that him and I were going to get along because it was obvious he wanted the project to be a success, and I felt the same way. It had to be a success, right? I was putting my name on this project. So as we got closer to the project kickoff, Cash and I started discussing the project timeline, and we agreed to an aggressive launch date 8 weeks away. And I remember that was the first time I realized that Cash had an ability to drive momentum, and he had a vision and believed that people around him could help execute that vision. So we agreed on the timeline, and then Cash and I pulled the project team together along with all of the partners within the organization. And we took the time to ask for input on the project goal. We discussed the end state, what our goal was, and even allowed folks to bring up their concerns. And I remember during that meeting, folks were a little hesitant. In fact, it got a little spicy. But Cash, to his credit, was amazing at listening, but also resetting the context or sharing additional information that could put people at ease. And I remember this didn't faze him. He listened to their concerns, and we together as a group came up with that vision and that execution plan. And as we started the project, we knew that communication was going to be key. So we set up reoccurring weekly meetings with the project team. Each of us, including Cash and I, would come to that meeting to talk about the deliverables, and we would discuss in detail what folks had been working on the week prior. And I remember there was two of my favorite people I worked with on that project team. One of them was Lorianne and the other one was Danielle. These two ladies were fantastic. They were rock stars. They had both been in banking for years, and they knew how to get results. But more importantly, what I loved about each of them is they knew how to treat people. They knew how to get results, but also realized that we're all human beings and we have to treat each other as such. And so during my interactions with the project, I made it a point to frequently chat with them because I loved their energy and I loved what they brought to the table. So I would offer my support or give recognition. And it's funny, those weekly meetings, I thought they were going to be kind of lame going into it. I wasn't sure. I kind of maybe assumed the worst, but they weren't lame at all. In fact, they were pretty fun, but they were also intense. And I always remember that. I thought, what a cool dichotomy that something can be fun, but also very intense. So we all had the same goal on the team. We all had the same vision. And even though we didn't necessarily work for the same boss, we felt like we were part of the same team, which was pretty special. And as the project went on, we had obstacles, right? One thing happened after another, such as life, things happen. But somehow by supporting each other and building each other up, we overcame every single obstacle. And fast forward 2 months later, 8 weeks, almost to the day, we had successfully launched an appointment tool, and it worked like a charm, right? This tool was working, and we immediately saw buy-in and results. Our executives were thrilled. And as I reflected on that project, as I say I like to do, two things stuck out. Number one, the project set a record for how fast we finished while being successful. No other large-scale project even came close to that. So I remember that. And number two, the project team one by one shared the following feedback with me. And I'll never forget what they said. They said, we had never worked on a cross-functional project like this where we felt we were on the same team throughout. They thanked me for my recognition and constant support. And I got to tell you, those two things stuck out to me. And I try to bring those back into anything that I do in the future. I want to make sure that I consistently drive momentum, just like I learned from Cash. And I want to make sure that I continue to treat people in a way that they feel like they're on my team and that I get the best out of them. So I'm hoping today you heard a couple of things, maybe just one or two things you could take away and try as you're leading projects. So I want to leave you with a challenge. This week, I want you to volunteer to take on a project at work, at your church, somewhere in your life. Maybe you've been scared to do it. Maybe you didn't think you could do it. Maybe you thought people are going to think you're a fraud. Doesn't matter. I want you to listen to this episode. I want you to take away a couple things you can try, and I want you to volunteer to take on a project at work. You're going to feel out of your comfort zone, but you're going to feel incredibly fulfilled. and you're going to be proud of yourself for taking that little risk. And as we wrap up, I want to say thank you so much for listening. Make it a great day. This has been the Introvert Leader Podcast. Subscribe for new episodes every other Wednesday.